Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm from the Council of European BioRegions, and myself and Emiliano, co-moderated the tables on cluster management. And we've split our presentations as we had a lot to say. I'm just going to talk about the first half of the outcomes from our table discussions, which were really the credentials of the people that would be required for cluster management, the type of tasks that they would have to undertake. And it resulted in a pretty long list of things to do. So first of all, we were looking for the type of person that would be able to do this type of role. We had the key things we required in a person were them to be able to act as a leader, to be entrepreneurial, to be an excellent communicator, to be able to mobilize experts, to be able to identify needs within the cluster and then mobilize resources to meet them, to be able to mobilize all actors within a cluster, which is of course a challenge that we still face, and to be a salesperson, because they're going to have to go back and take things back to their cluster that all the actors may not want to hear. They have to act as a hub for all cluster actors. They have to facilitate. They have to create the right conditions for people to work together. There was a very long debate as to whether they needed a technical background. Some said yes, some said no. And they have to bring authority to all players. And through this, they would build trust through the services that they provide into all the different actors within a cluster. And of course, this is a very long job description. And the sort of person who would be able to meet all of these needs would be looking at a salary not necessarily in keeping with what a regional development agency would like to pay them. So it inevitably moved to the fact that we would require a team to do this, and that cluster management must be done by a multi-skilled team. And this is where I hand over to Emiliano for the second half of our presentation.
Thank you very much. As you can see, in order to avoid using my glasses, I have some notes at a larger size on the floor. I think both presentations connect in the fact that we already started a little bit with this assumption that this is going to be a team, and we focus more on the idea on what are the skills that will be necessary and what makes this skill particular. And I think the common point was that these skills are counterintuitive in one way. They're cross-border. They're not in the traditional silos that normally they are in business and in academia and so on. I think we started with an observation from a Swedish point of view, which said, you know, it needs to be somebody who was going to be working with corporations, with academia, and with government. And definitely, these three worlds are worlds that in Europe are very separated. You make your careers in every one of those, but not in the three of those. So we need somebody who's going to have to work with the three. So in one way, it will be coming from one of these worlds, and therefore it will need to be trained with the skills of the other world. They will need to know about how government works, if somebody that comes from business, and he will need to know how academia works. And so cross-border is the common issue. We also saw that these cross-border skills will deal with not anymore knowing about your sector, but also knowing about other sectors. It will be also very important to bring new skills and new views to your sector. Maybe if you are in the textile sector, you don't need to bring skills from the textile sector, but from logistics and from technology from other sides. We also need to cross the border between this idea of human and technical capabilities. You need to be very good at human relations, being able to manage groups, but also you don't need to be just a charlatan moving people, but you need to have the technical skills to make sure that what you say is something which is accurate and analytically feasible. And we know that it's very difficult to find. You have either analytical people, you have more process people, but we need to put both together. There needs to be a balance on those. No? We also need to be, connecting to that, be able to create consensus, but not to arrive consensus by lowering standards, but on the contrary, to lead consensus. At one point, we mentioned this idea of consensus by leadership, which is basically manipulation, but in a positive side. No? You need to be a good manipulator of the cluster to take it forward. No? We also discussed this idea between short-term and long-term. We traditionally divide short-term as a tactical skills and long-term as a strategic skills. Well, this person needs to be working, or this team needs to be working on both sides. They need to work long-term, and long-term we assume there were periods of 5-10 years, which will take us to build competitive clusters. And tactically, we need to work with budgets of maybe 1 or 2 years and political cycles of a short period. No? Then it was also connected to this idea of long on how long. It was an interesting comment coming from an Italian experience where we already have cluster managers that have been in their job for 20 years, and we can see how that has become very sclerotic. So we need also a combination of this needs to be a renewal period. There should be an age limit to cluster management. Should it be a renovation period? The idea of lifelong learning was expressed. Clearly, this cannot be something that you learn once, but you have to continuously be renewing yourself. So as you can see, the kind of skills we need, they need to be definitely in a team, because they're very different, very difficult to find those skills in the same kind of people. There will be teams of very different people with a long-term view, with a tactical view, people with a strategic view, with a technical view, with a human view. So that will be complicated. And when it comes to what the skills are necessary, we'll always be complementing those persons with the skills that they are missing, because they will be mostly in one of the areas. That was for the first point. And for the second point, I think we can say that we didn't get too far.
We discussed I think we were talking about the labeling and the training.
The need to formalize this or not?
Yeah, it was very difficult to discuss the formalization of a profession that has not yet formally been created. We discussed to some extent the training and the qualifications, but I think at this early stage in the conversation and in looking at a new profession, there is not enough to create a valuable label or certificate attached to it. If something is created out of political necessity, it may not be the standard or the quality that people bring, and then the sector will not have any credibility in what it does.
So I would say that there is not a common view. It's difficult in the table, and every group tended to take one. That we met 3 groups, and everyone at the end tended to one saying yes, it's needed. The other saying no, it's not needed. It's too early. So I don't think we can make a conclusion on that. What some of the things would say, well, yes, we need to have some way to measure, otherwise we will not improve. Yes, but that's as a general principle. And the other one was that make sure that it's on the organization as well, because at the end of the day, what we're measuring is the organization, not the persons.